Let's open with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, we just thank you for time together with you and with one another. Please bless our time. Let it be fruitful and beneficial. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay. Wanted to continue with our last program some months back on financial management. So this will be... Sorry, hold on a second. Yes, we're talking about financial management day, all based on Ellen White. So I'm going to take my thoughts, continue my thoughts from Adventist Home. So
we have today's application of Ellen G. White's financial advice.
well, that's why we're all here together. So it's Sabbath school, so we can all participate and give our thoughts. Okay, so just to review, we started the chapter in Adventist Home, looking at the idea of money, financial management. And this is going to be like an ongoing program. So once we're finished Adventist Home, then I'll move on to more practical type stuff. And I'll try and spiritualize it if I can, as in make it suitable for Sabbath. Sometimes when talking about money, it gets very kind of secular and technical, but at the same time, I think it's important we go through those things. And the idea was I was going to do this on a Friday evening, but come Friday, I'm so exhausted. I just kind of like too tired. But anyway, let's see what happens. So, please, if you have a question or something, put your hands up, and then Emma will let me know. And let's go straight into it. So we left off on this paragraph in Adventist Home, page 29, or actually page 369 in Adventist Home, okay? And it's called Systematic Giving for the Family. So just for reference, it's actually page 291, okay? In Adventist Home, and it's chapter 60, Stewards of God. So we had a discussion last time about what the idea of steward of God was, and we left off on this paragraph. So I'll read through it and then we'll have a discussion. Systematic giving for the family. Let every one of you lay by them in store as God hath prospered them. Every member of the family, from the oldest down to the youngest, may take part in this work of benevolence. The plan of systematic benevolence, so this was reference made to plans followed in the early church, where they would lay aside weekly tithes and offerings, will prove a safeguard to every family against temptations to spend means for needless things, and especially will it provide or prove a blessing to be rich by guarding them for indulging in extravagances. So the idea of this systematic benevolence is really to remind us that actually what we own is not our own, that we have and that God gives us. And the beautiful thing about God, he doesn't say give everything to him. He doesn't say, if you've got £1 million, give him give God £1 million. But what he's saying is, you give me a portion, and the rest you use, wisely. And it's a reminder every time then that we do tithes and offerings, that the money that we earn, the energy that we have, the blessings that we have are not actually our own. Every week, the demands of God upon each family are brought to mind by each of its members, fully carrying out the plan. And as they have denied themselves some superfluity superfluity, superfluity, in order to have means to put into the treasury. Lessons of value in self-denial for the glory of God have been impressed upon the heart. Once a week, each is brought face to face with the doings of the past week, the income that they might have had if they had been economical, and the means that they do not have because of indulgence. Their conscience is reined up, as it were, before God, and either commends or accuses them. They learn that if they retain peace of mind in the favor of God, they must eat and drink and dress to God's glory. So, okay, let's have a discussion then. In continuation with our thoughts last week, what do we mean by superfluity? You know, is it any thoughts on that?
How do you spell the word?
Can you not see it on the screen? Yeah,
Let me.
super and then fluidity.
Oh, fluidity, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
superfluity.
I think when it means that everything's running smoothly, it's everything's shared out, or yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think the context of it is more about excess, indulgence, about doing things which you don't really need in excess. Like if you're going to have, food, you have apple pie and custard all the time, or desserts or super rich foods or expensive things, Go on.
I'm just going to read the definition. It says an unnecessarily, can people hear? An unnecessarily or excessively large amount or number of something. An unnecessary thing. So yeah.
So should we give all our money to the work? So if we earn,
My comment yesterday on the background.
if we earn, I don't know, average salary, let's say, £1,500, £2,000 a month, coming in. Once we've paid all our bills, should we just give it all away? Any thoughts? Quiet today. Should we give it all away? Natalie says yes.
No, because you need some money to live on.
Okay, so I said that after all your bills, so after all your rent or mortgage or your shopping bills or your electrics and all the bills, etc., etc., etc. So let's say out of 2,000 a month, you've got £700 left from that, for argument's sake. What should you do with that £700?
Are you saying that you can save some? You can, yeah.
I'm not saying anything. I'm asking you. I'm asking you.
Okay, yeah. I
Asking
agree
you
with
as
what
in
Marshall says about saving your money, and then giving. I just think you have to look at your circumstances and see what you can give away.
Will God look after your rainy day? What is a rainy day?
okay. So Natalie says, give it all away and God will provide for you.
No, I didn't say that. I said, what is a rainy day, Marshall, and will God provide for that?
Okay, so sorry, I misrepresented that. Natalie's saying, what is a rainy day and will not God provide for us when we're in a rainy day?
Marshall.
And that's to Marshall.
Okay. Happy Sabbath, everyone.
Happy Sabbath, Marshall.
Yeah, I was just thinking, after you manage to do your budget and you cover your bills and everything, you need to save a portion of your money for a rainy day. And a rainy day is an unforeseen occurrence. That's my understanding. So, for example, you might. Yes, we have things like insurance. We have things like what's this? Okay, for both life or property, but you might have a sudden occurrence that requires a certain portion of your money immediately. That's kind of the rainy day. I don't have an example, but if I think of something, I'll post it.
I mean, I would define a rainy day as an unplanned event. Okay, so it's unplanned, an emergency event, and a rainy day could be even, emergency funding. So your car breaks down, you didn't really have budget for it. It's a rainy day. You get, all your tiles blown off the roof, and it rains coming in. That is really a rainy day, and I say that because that actually happened to us. That happened to us in January, where all our roof tiles came off and it rained, and rain was coming through into our ceiling. Thankfully, we had insurance, that covered it eventually. But yeah, so a rainy day is unexpected, it's unplanned. It could be anything. It could be health, it could be accidents, it could be all kinds of things. So the idea what Marshall is suggesting, that out of, let's say, you earn 2,000 and you got left after everything, all your bills is 700, is we should put some of that 700 away, okay, for our rainy day fund, or call it emergency fund, okay. And that really is to cover anything unplanned or unexpected. So let's say we take off 200 for rainy day, leaves us with 500. What can we do now with our 500?
Invested.
Okay, go on.
I want to make a comment because I feel that at the back of all this council, when Ellen White's writing this, can people hear me okay?
Can you hear Emma? Put your mic on, Emma, and I'll...
Yes, we can.
If you can. Okay, so it's gonna have feedback. Okay, so yeah, I do feel that behind a lot of this council is the desire to do public evangelism. It's the need for the gospel to go to the world and for us to invest in souls. And because that work has changed, I feel that it may change this council. And I'm not saying that we don't give to God, but ultimately, once the tithe has been given to pay Bible workers, for instance, we don't have the work of public evangelism. We don't often have church buildings that we have to pay for offerings. So this need for finances, in the way that she speaks about it, doesn't seem to me to be the same need, perhaps. And then I know Natalie said,
was it written?
Put it, I don't know, but put it in the whole time of Ellen White, it still applies, I think, to public evangelism. But at the same time, I know, Natalie, you just mentioned you put it in camp meeting, the money. I don't know if you meant you pay for yourself to go to camp meeting, because that's still for us, really, even though that's the work of God. And I'm not saying that's wrong.
Ellen White talks about that, doesn't she?
She talks
saying about spending your money on camp
meetings.
meetings. Yeah, that's right.
So if we include that, then we save money for camp meeting. And yeah, I think that's still a worthy cause.
Okay, so we've got 500 left. So we're going to take 200 a month out for camp meetings. So you've got 300 left. I think the point really is,
Sorry.
the point really is, what we need to do is, we do need to, and Marshall brought up the point, we should have a budget, and we should portion up our monies into like little different pots. And that way then we can budget for planned things and unplanned things. And yeah, Ellen White talks about putting the money into work for evangelism. There is still work for us to do in some extent, in terms of even just personal sharing our faith with people. But I guess where I'm really gonna get with this is we shouldn't feel bad, if we as a family want to do something together, okay, or we want to go on a holiday together, or we want to go for a meal together, because sometimes people start feeling guilty or have guilt trips that they've done something and they should have given the money to the work or something. And I think it's really about having this balance between providing for the needs of the family, and also, even though we may not be doing, you know, worldwide evangelism, there's still people that may need our help, you know. So yeah, Curtis puts portion your money for your pursuit of happiness too. So I think a little bit there, you know, is for us, the family. Of course, you know, true happiness is having Jesus in your life, but still, and coming to camp meeting. Emma has a point.
Sorry, yeah, I wanted to add to that she also seems in this paragraph to be focused on the last sentence anyway, that if you retain peace of mind and favor with God, you must eat, drink, and dress to God's glory. So this is a focus on the eating and drinking and dressing aspect of our lives, which I feel we've shifted in our thinking on that as well. So I don't know if that impacts this discussion about money, because I think there are things perhaps before we wouldn't have bought or we wouldn't have done. I don't know if we'd say that's indulgent now, but it's still temperate, obviously. Yeah, whether that impacts the discussion.
Yeah, Curtis likes going karting, especially for his macchiato. But the issue though, I think, is as stewards, and Rose talked about investing as stewards. So for example, if I go shopping, I can buy £1,000 suit, or I can buy a £600 suit, or I can buy a £400 suit, or I can go on eBay and buy a £50 suit, you know. So the issue, I think, is really, and I've always maintained this, is that we should always live within our means. So if we live within our means, okay, so if I was a millionaire, you know, if I bought not that I would ever, but if I bought £1,000 suit, it's within my affordability, okay. But if I'm not a millionaire, I'm on my 2,000 a month and I've got only £700 disposable income, then I might go for the, you know, the more budget options. So when it comes to money, I think it's definitely something between you and God. And I still maintain its value. I mean, that's a biblical verse in terms of, you know, eat and drink and dress to God's glory. And I don't see really a problem with that, how that's changed. Just because we may be drinking something different, the principle is, you know, the same. When like, for example, whenever I go to eat, whenever I go out, I always still think out, you know, hummus and bread. I think I've shared that before. I can think when I go out, I can spend easily £7-8 eating something, or I can spend maybe £3 getting hummus and bread, and I feel, you know, that's fine. It fills me up, and I don't feel like, you know, I've wasted money. But everyone has to kind of make their own decisions on that issue. Natalie, want to share something?
When you look at other denominations, churches, and how they run their church, there's always a pot to help the people within that church. So I'm hoping there's one of those within this movement. I know you have to be wise by how you give money to people, because people can have the best iPhone and then say they've got no money and they need help. But I think if we're talking about money and we're not doing evangelism, we should be taking care of the flock, those who are less fortunate than ourselves. And that's what I think offering should be for.
Yeah, so Natalie, did everyone hear what Natalie said? She thinks, you know, some of the offerings should be used to help others. In fact, there is some parts. So like in Africa, people who are in dire straits, you know.
Dire straits in the West.
When I mean dire straits, like, you know, they've been persecuted, or, you know, for whatever reason, sometimes they can get some assistance, especially if they're running away from home, or, you know, violence, that kind of, you know, situation. But, you know, anyone wants to help Natalie to go to camp meeting, she's here.
There was time to help Natalie, but it never came.
Okay, so any other comments on that? Make God's requirements first. God's requirements come first. We are not doing God's will if we consecrate to God what is left of our income after all our imaginary wants have been supplied. Before any part of our earnings is consumed, we should take out and present to God that portion which God claims. In the old dispensation, an offering of gratitude was kept continually burning upon the altar, thus showing man's endless obligation to God. If we have prosperity in our secular business, it is because God blesses us. A part of this income is to be devoted to the poor, and a large proportion to be applied to the cause of God. When that which God claims is rendered to God, the remainder will be sanctified and blessed for our own use. But when a man robs God by withholding that which God requires, God's curse rests upon the whole. Okay, so God says, when you earn, you're earning because I've given you the ability to earn. Give God's bit first. And then the rest is blessed for you to.
Oh, you go in and out, can't hear.
Okay, I'm back in. I'm back in. All right. Sorry. I got Elon Musk internet and it's still failing me.
Maybe that's why it's failing. We're not meant to support it.
Okay. If I freeze again, I think I'll have to move. All right. Okay. So all good. Hear me, see me now? All right. So so basically God's saying do his part first, and then the rest you have is then to do as you please with your own. And I'm a firm believer putting money aside for rainy days, saving, and making sure you provide for the future. I always maintain you should live as if you're going to live for 20 years, but also live as if today's your last day. So in other words, if I'm going to be around in 20 years' time, I need to make sure that if I'm going to be around for 20 years, I need to make sure that my family is provided for and that there is provision. Hold on a second. Okay, sorry, apologies for that. Okay, so remember the needy poor. If we represent the character of Christ, every particle of selfishness must be expelled from the soul. In carrying forward the work God gave to our hands, it will be necessary for us to give every jot and tittle of our means that we can spare. Poverty and distress in families will come to our knowledge, and afflicted and suffering ones will have to be relieved. We know very little of the human sufferings that exist everywhere about us, But as we have opportunity, we should be ready to render immediate assistance to those who are under severe pressure.
Jim,
Yeah.
you know, if we just go back a bit, I want to make a comment.
Hold on.
You know, it says, when that which God claims rendered to God, the remainder will be sanctified and blessed for our use. So I just wanted to say, I wanted to say before, but you can see. I wanted to say that the more you give, the more your money is blessed that is left with you. And people tend to think, I give time or I give offering, I'm going to lose out, I'm going to be less rich. It's the opposite.
I've always found that when you give to God, in whichever way, your money that you have left over somehow actually stretches further. It's like the pound actually gives you more than the pound's worth. And that can be in many ways. So yeah, I agree with that. The squandering of money in luxuries deprives the poor of the means necessary to supply them with food and clothing, and that which is spent for the gratification of pride in dress, in buildings, in furniture, and in decorations would relieve the distress of many wretched, suffering families. God's Jews are to minister to the needy. Okay, so what do you think about this then? Is this relevant for us today? Remember the needy poor?
Is this like internal, or would you walk past a homeless person and not help them?
I think it's referring to both.
I think you should question yourself if you walk past someone and ask you for something and you don't give. It just, and don't have judgmentalism about, oh, they're druggies, they're alcoholics, they're whatever. Just give.
Okay, so Natalie says just give if you see someone in need.
God deals with the rest.
Anyone else?
I think if you earn a lot of money, like, and maybe in the middle class, then you can't be dressed in rags, you know, or dressed down in a way. You just got to dress for your job, the people you meet, and everything. And I don't think that's. I just think that's. I don't think it's bad in any way to up to your money on how you dress. If I'm making sense.
I think first of all, we live in a society where we have benefits. Okay, that's one thing. All right, we have benefits. So ignoring actually people who are on the streets for whatever reason, people are on benefits, and I know people who are on benefits, and they're always going on holiday. They drive almost a better car than I do. And it's like, gosh, they live as if they are very wealthy. The other thing I find as well is there are some people who are poor and they just have unfortunate bad luck in their life. I'll use the word bad luck. And there are other people who are poor of their own making, for various reasons. For me personally, if I see someone on the streets and they ask me for money, I never give them money straight. I'll ask them, what do you want the money for? So I know Natalie says not to judge. I am a little bit judgmental. I said, what do you want the money for? I want to buy some food. So I'll actually go and buy them some food to stop them using that money for buying drink or drugs. They want food, fine. I'll provide, the food for that. So everyone can do whatever they feel comfortable with, but that's generally what I do. Any other thoughts? God's remedy for selfishness and covetousness, the giving that is the fruit of self-denial, is a wonderful help to the giver. It imparts an education that enables us more fully to comprehend the work of God, who went about doing good, relieving the suffering, and supplying the needs of the destitute. Constant self-denying benevolence is God's remedy for the cankering sins of selfishness and covetousness. And God has arranged systematic benevolence to sustain God's cause and relieve the necessities of the suffering and needy. God has ordained that giving should become a habit, that it may counteract the dangerous and deceitful sins of covetousness, and continual giving starves covetousness to death. Systematic benevolence is designed in the order of God to tear away treasures from the covetous as fast as they are gained, and to consecrate them to the Lord to whom they belong. The constant practice of God's plan of systematic benevolence weakens covetousness and strengthens benevolence. And if riches increase, men, even those professing godliness, set their hearts upon them. And the more they have, the less they give to the treasury of the Lord. Thus, riches make men selfish, and hoarding feeds covetousness, and these evils strengthened by active exercise. God knows our danger and has hedged us about with means to prevent our own ruin. God requires the constant exercise of benevolence, that the force of habit is good works may break the force of habit in an opposite direction. Any thoughts? Are we selfish? Not selfish? Do you feel you're selfish? Do you feel you're stingy?
I think this has also a lot to do with faith, isn't it?
Okay.
You know, if you're not selfish and you constantly give, it's a test of faith also, that God will take care of you and supply all your needs, and there's always that struggle and that wrestle with faith.
Yeah. I mean,
Sorry, can you repeat what Natalie said? I never heard anything.
I'll say it loud.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's a part of this that is a wrestle with yourself, not being selfish and covetousness regarding faith, whether God will provide your needs. I think there's always a wrestle with giving, because you worry, especially if you live alone and you have no family, that wrestle of, I'm not saying be ridiculous and don't be, clever by putting something aside, like Manjit talked about. But I think it's all about faith, really, when it comes down to it.
I think for me, go ahead.
Could I ask you to scroll back up a bit? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, to the beginning of that subsection, the subtitle. Yeah, there. So for me, my thoughts went to institutions, to be honest. I didn't think so much about, how this relates to individuals, which I'm not saying it doesn't, but that's where my thoughts went. So it went to ancient Israel. And now ancient Israel had a system that God had put in place, an economic system that was designed to allow for the pursuit of, individual wealth and property, while at the same time balancing with the welfare of everyone in the society, because God recognized that people had different means, would be at different levels economically, and tried to put in place a system that would, balance the needs of everyone. The 6 years and then the 7th year, you let the land rest, you don't harvest anything in the fields, you allow the poor to take, you let the slaves go, amongst other things. And how Israel actually failed and fell apart as a system because of covetousness, basically. And Ellen White says the same thing about America. And she says the love of money is in their hearts, and that this would be the driving force in the fall of the United States. And we actually see today that economics are front and center in the crisis that's happening, not only in America, but the rest of the world. You've got the rich becoming richer and the poor becoming poorer. And right-wing populists, while, presenting themselves as for the common people and wanting to give these people upward mobility, not saying they are being honest or dishonest, but they don't really solve the problem. Most of the steps they take, like the Trump administration in particular, actually benefits those who are already rich. And there's controversies like the taxing of the rich, cutting taxes on the rich whilst increasing the economic burden on those that hardly have anything ready. My point being, covetousness at an institutional level is what has brought this world to where it currently is. And I'm not saying I know what the solution is in terms of a sophisticated system, but if there had been willingness on the part of governments, on the part of the movers and shakers in society to balance out the needs and concerns of most people, who wouldn't have as much a polarized society as we have today. Because people are acting the way they're acting today, voting for the people they're voting for today, because many of them feel they don't have money, and they're struggling to get by. And that's because of the covetousness that's gripping our society as a whole. So that's just something I wanted to mention.
No. I think
Yeah.
that type of that when we talk about institutions or government institutions, that's why we pay taxes. So we pay our taxes and national insurance. And the idea of that tax is then to be used for, public service. So I think the reference here is not really talking about, I understand you're talking from an institution perspective, that the selfishness and covetousness, I agree. But the context here isn't really talking about taxes. We need to pay our taxes and national insurance. And taxes are going to go up, by the way. So just be mindful that we need to tighten our belts, our girdles, our trousers, whatever we wear, a little bit tighter, because things are going to get a little bit tougher. Natalie, so you speak louder. Yeah.
When Blessing's talking about institutions, I agree, because we're, in the movement, we're concentrating on institutions and not individuals. And I know this, you're talking on an individual level. I was just wondering, as the man of finance, Manjit, I was just wondering, as we see people like the tech bros in the USA government, I say government because they are. So like Planetair is a company, Peter Thiel, and he's running the NHS in England. He's taken all the data from there and he's being allowed it. I think it was like 330 million contract he got with the NHS. And also they're taking the data, many things, institutions in the USA. Now, Planetair is a share. So would you say that it is immoral to invest in something like Planetair when you see that they are using AI algorithms with regards to, say, for instance, who survived in Gaza when they're bombing the place or whatever for Hamas? Or so I was just wondering what's your thoughts on morally, because I know Ellen White, did she invest in diamonds for the church? And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on stuff like that, because we go and invest in our pensions and we invest in shares or whatever you do, but morally, is that blood money like 9/11 or not?
I think where one invests is very personal. What I mean is
it salvation?
Okay, for example, all right, to be on the stock market as an example, all right, let's take it that level. You have to meet certain criteria. For example, if you are a drug dealer, all right, or you're
a murderer.
Or
You're murdering people.
what I'm saying is there's certain standards you have to have to be a tradable investment. Okay, you have to meet certain criteria to be a credible investment. So if I was the mafia, or I was doing sexual, prostitution, that kind of stuff, that stuff is not permissible. So, you wouldn't be able to invest legally in those operations. So if something is
Immoral.
if something is legally investable, that's a baseline, if you can put it that way. Then you have to choose whether you want to invest in defense industries, if you want to invest in whiskey and vodka, if you want to invest in guns, if you want to invest in those type of things, because from a legal perspective or legal standard, they've passed the test. All right, so it then comes down to you if you want to invest in those areas. There's plenty of different kind of ways to invest. There's different funds, there's different shares that you can go more ethical, or you can go more green. For example, strict Muslims, when they invest, they invest, it was called Sharia finance. So they won't invest in any alcohol, for example. They won't invest in any things which are considered to be speculative. So they won't necessarily invest
They
in.
would invest in planters who are sending drones over Gaza.
So
That's what I'm. That's
so
probably what I'm-
so that's a personal choice whether you want to invest in it or not. That's military, all right? Some people might decide I'm not going to invest in military. Some people, you know, like I guess I'm like Greta Thunberg wants to invest in green projects. When it comes to investment, it's very personal. I'm not sure, you know, if you were to invest in a FTSE 100 share or a Dow Jones or a S&P 500, and one of them was making bombs. I'm not sure if that is a salvational issue. I think investing directly in mafia or sex trading or prostitution, that is. So I think investing primary, is it giving you a good return? I mean, for me, when I'm looking at investment, what's the returns? What's the fund? What's it being invested in? So, you know, when I do my pension funds, for example, they'll do a portion in the UK market, American market, and it won't specify particularly what specific shares they're in, because they're tracking all of the FTSE 100 or all of the Dow or all of the S&P 500, and if that particular company that is referring to is in there, then I'm investing in there as part of a portfolio. So without getting into specifics with particular companies, you choose where you want to invest your money. If you feel it's immoral or unethical, don't invest in it. So I think it's a very personal choice on that one. Invest where you're comfortable with. Okay, any other questions? Okay, principles of family finance. Money may be a blessing or a curse. Who agrees? Is it a blessing or is it a curse?
Blessing.
It's a blessing. Okay. How is it a blessing?
Because it helps you, the money that I get, my pension, it just helps me to be able to live. It helps me be able to give. It helps me to help my children sometimes. And yeah, it's a blessing because I'm able to maintain the standard that I usually have and I need for myself. What I eat, where I go. So it's been a blessing.
And you can go to camp meetings as well when you've got money too.
Yes, camp meetings too.
How is it a curse? Anyone? How is money a curse?
I think can be a distraction, especially for us in the movement. I think it can be a worry for the individual where they're going to put their money, how they're going to take care of it, how make sure they're not going to lose it. It's time consuming if you've got a lot of money. And I'm talking about curse, yeah. And it's a test to have money. You're tested by God. What are you going to do? Are you going to bless others, or are you going to put it in the corner and let it collect dust and some fun? Are you going to use it for God's word? So you can say, "Oh, I want money. It's a blessing," but be careful what you pray for, because you're going to be watched how you use every single penny of it.
Money is not necessarily a curse. Sorry, money is not necessarily a curse. It is of high value because if rightly appropriated, it can do good in the salvation of souls, in blessing others who are poorer than ourselves. By an improvident or unwise use, money will become a snare to the user. He or they who employs money to gratify pride and ambition makes it a curse rather than a blessing. Money is a constant test of the affections. Whoever acquires more than sufficient for their real needs should seek wisdom and grace to know their own heart and to keep their heart diligently, lest they have imaginary wants and become an unfaithful steward, using with prodigality their Lord's entrusted capital.
Say something on that?
Mhm.
I was just thinking, I think Ellen White says in the last days that many will be offered high profile jobs, the money will be enticing, which will distract them away from God. There will be many opportunities. And I think I really do see, when I see AI and what they're up to and what they're going to do, I do see that every soul will be tested in regards to finance in the coming year.
Rose says it's actually what you do with the money that become a blessing or a curse. So you
Yeah.
can use that money to bless others, your own family, or you can use money, as a curse.
Richard put a quote. Richard wrote, "The blessing of the Lord maketh rich and addeth no sorrow with it." I don't know if that's the same.
Yeah, if it comes from the Lord,
That's
it's
not
a
really a
blessing.
comment on the money, I guess.
No.
Specifically.
I think that's Spitzer sharing that quote. When we love God supremely, temporal things will occupy their right place in our affections. If we humbly and earnestly seek for knowledge and ability in order to make a right use of our Lord's goods, we shall receive wisdom from above. When the heart learns to its own preferences and inclinations, when the thought is cherished that money can confer happiness without the favor of God, then the money becomes a tyrant, ruling the man. It receives God's confidence, or receives their confidence and esteem, and is worshipped as a god. Honor, truth, righteousness, and justice are sacrificed upon its altar. The commands of God's word are set aside, and the world's customs and usages, which King Mammon has ordained, become a controlling power. And I believe this is why God says, put God first, pay your tithe, because then it's a reminder to us that we don't go down, the dark road of these things. Any thoughts? Seek security in home ownership. If the laws given by God had continued to be carried out, how different would be the present condition of the world, morally, spiritually, and temporally? Selfishness and self-importance would not be manifested as now, but each would cherish a kind regard for the happiness and welfare of others. Instead of the poorer classes being kept under the iron heel of oppression by the wealthy, instead of having other men's brains to think and plan for them in temporal as well as in spiritual things, they would have some chance for independence of thought and action. Okay, so the title is Seek Security in Home Ownership. So Ellen White actually encourages us that we should own our own properties.
For many, it's out of reach in this day and age.
So Natalie says for many, it's out of reach in this day and age.
It's a bit late, unless we have a crash.
Maybe so, maybe not. The sense of being owners of their own homes would inspire them with a strong desire for improvement. Improvement in what? Improvement in what? Okay, so the sense of being owners of their own homes would inspire them with a strong desire for improvement. So, I don't know about yous, as in everyone else, but I find in my life, right, that if I don't strive for being a better person, if I don't strive for goals, if I don't strive moving forward, I go stale, I die. And I think any one of us that stops trying to improve ourselves, trying to improve our circumstances, I think we will go stale. And I think what she's saying here is that if we strive to become homeowners, then it motivates us or gives us the desire to improve our circumstances, to improve our lives, to improve our money situations, to save our money, not waste it, so that we can invest it in our own homes. I think that's what she's referencing to. And also we can improve ourselves in education, we can improve ourselves in jobs, educating ourselves in just learning skills. There are many things that we can improve ourselves so that we can, in other words, have this motivation then to own our own homes. So just because it may be out of reach, if something's out of reach, do we give up? Or do we just keep fighting, keep determining that, it's a goal to try and strive for?
Another thing as well, because the climate of the economy around the world, like for instance, an example, my sister, she bought a home.
Yeah.
And the interest rate, she didn't have a fixed mortgage rate, so it went up 3 times. So it went from 350 to 1,200 or whatever it was, 3,900. So you have those things to think about. Unless you can buy your home outright, it can be, because you can't stay in a fixed rate contract for a long time. So whether you had one or not, sooner or later you're going to be paying triple of what you thought you were going to be paying. So you have to be careful in this economy that we're living in.
Sure. And if you are home out, I always encourage, try and pay off your home. Try and pay your mortgage off quicker. That's something else you can do with your leftover money, is make extra payments on your home. I get it. A lot of us, I know a lot of us rent, we find ourselves in a trap, if I can put it that way, where rents have gone up quite high. So we pay lots of high rents. I mean, it's a fact that the rents that people pay is actually a lot more than the mortgage on those homes. Otherwise, landlords wouldn't do it on their properties. So what you need is, or the issue I think Natalie's raising, is people can't have enough money to put the down payment on a house, which again then is a desire for improvement, that we save and save, so at least then we can get a 10%, 5%, or whatever percent, deposit we can put down on our property. And maybe this is another way when God talks about, when we put God first, that the money that we have left over, is blessed. Everyone will have their own circumstances. For example, you can get homes up in Burnley, if you like Burnley. You can get homes for 50, 60,000. Grimsby, so it's called Grimsby because it's grim. But there are places where it may not be ideal, where you can get on the ladder. But I think it's a sacrifice. It takes sacrifice, and it takes kind of setting of goals. Educate our people to get out of the cities into the country, where they can obtain a small piece of land and make a home for themselves and their children. And that's difficult too. And I always think, if you're going to go into the country, plan it carefully. Can you afford to buy? Can you afford to go into the country? How are you going to sustain yourselves? So we have this, I guess, conservative idea that, yeah, we need to go into the country, and then people find themselves in the country, and then they're broke, they're bust, they can't get work, they end up being in a poorer, worse situation than when they were when they were in the cities.
Well, they can survive, don't you?
So make sure when you plan your route to the country, or country living, you plan it very carefully. How does everyone feel about home ownership? Good idea, bad idea? A dream. Natalie says it's a dream.
I think it depends on circumstances and where you are in life. So, for instance, if you run the numbers, and you see that in the long run, it works out cheaper for you to rent and put the money that you would save on home ownership and invest it in the stock market, for instance, after some time, it could work out better for you than using that on a home and then paying off your mortgage and spending money maintaining that home. So my answer is it depends on each person.
Yeah, it does, and also location too, because there are some locations which is just very, very, very expensive. So Yeah, move to Burnley. Very cheap over there. Caution regarding selling homes. There are poor men and women who are writing to me for advice as to whether they shall sell their homes and give the process to the cause. They say the appeals for means stir their souls and they want to do something for the master, who has done everything for them. I would say such, it may not be your duty to sell your little homes just now, but go to God for yourselves. The Lord will certainly hear your earnest prayers for wisdom to understand your duty.
Still, I might not want to sell a home.
Oh, I think what she's saying is it may not be the best idea to sell everything up, for the cause, especially your homes. Your homes is like your last asset. It's like your retirement in some ways. God does not call for the houses God's people need to live in. But if those who have an abundance do not hear God's voice, cut loose from the world and sacrifice for God. God will pass them by and will call for those who are willing to do anything for Jesus, even to sell their homes to meet the wants of the cause. A praiseworthy independence. Independence of one kind is praiseworthy. To desire to bear your own weight and not to eat the bread of dependence is right. It is a noble, generous ambition that dictates the wish to be self-supporting. Industrious habits and frugality are necessary. So home ownership gives some extent independence. You don't have unreasonable landlords, you don't have rent hikes, you don't have what you can do, what you cannot do. It's a little bit like when you work for yourself and you can call the shots, but when you work for others, there's certain things you can do, cannot do. That's just the way it is.
Manjit.
Yes, go ahead. Speak a little bit louder if you could.
Oh, okay. I wanted to ask a question
Go ahead.
about cutting loose from the world.
Yeah.
What is that? Previous paragraph.
Yeah.
You said those that had abundance, that cut loose from the world.
So I think here, so those of abundance do not hear God's voice. So basically, they're lost in their riches. And I believe what she's saying is cut loose from the world. In other words, you're better off sacrificing all of that for salvation's sake. So it's not to say you can't be rich. It's not to say you can't have abundance. Or working about. It's nothing wrong with working. The issue is what's coming first in your life. Is it the abundance? Is it the wealth? Or is it just, or is God first? And if the world is suffocating you or your abundance or your wealth, cut it loose. I think that's
Is
what
that
she's
like
saying.
the story of the rich man who says, go and give all to the
Yeah,
poor,
yeah,
and then you save, basically.
yeah. He didn't like the idea because he had
He needed
covetousness.
that to be said to him,
Exactly.
to be saved. And there's some of us like that.
Yeah. What do you think? Blessing, you agree, disagree?
I guess I don't understand, because what is the world?
Okay, yeah, all right. What is the world then? So the world is things of the world, business, commerce, money making, jobs, investing, stock market, go-karting, whatever you want to call it. That's the world, isn't it?
Because cutting loose would mean don't have a business, don't have a job, etc. If that's the definition of the world.
Okay, but you still have to eat, you still have to live, you still have to provide. It's a bit like it's a bit like, it's easier for the camel to go through, the eye of the needle. And what I'm saying is I believe it's an extreme solution. In other words, if things are so bad with you, if things are so selfish, things are so bad for you spiritually, as Natalie put it, you're better off doing that, cutting loose. I think it's an extreme position. I think it's more of a parable that because you can't, whatever you want to do, you can't cut loose from the world because the only way to cut loose from the world is you go live in a cave.
And it's a bit like money is a bit like love. Even if you do so many things that you shouldn't. At the end of the day, if you've got love, charity compasses everything, isn't it? So it's a bit like that. If you're spiritually lost, get rid of all your money, come to God. If you've got all things, but you don't have love, charity, I think it's Psalms 119 or something. That I think it's, if you can think of it like that. If you have no love, then find love and get rid of everything else.
Or you cut loose on the things that are holding you down, in as they call it, running the race to God. Marshall, you got your hand up.
It's, I think from drawing from the previous sentence, there's the issue of selling houses and the issue of an abundance. Excuse me. The people that are being called to cut, I think being called to cut loose from the world are people who have an abundance. And what I'm getting is that they need to cut loose from whatever is holding them back from sacrificing for the Lord, because others have gone to an extent of willing to sell off their houses so that they can fund the work. But there's a group of people who have an abundance but are not willing to cut off what's holding them back and give to the Lord. Those would be passed by. That's how I'm reading it. So to define the world there as well, I would think it's speaking more to whatever's holding people back, whether it's the temporal things or I'm not sure, but whatever's holding them back is what's, I think, being addressed.
I mean, God does say we live in the world, but don't be part of it. Go on. Someone's gonna say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I appreciate that Ellen White's probably not making a prophetic discourse about budgeting and etc. But that doesn't stop us from doing so. So I guess when she's gonna talk about worldliness and etc. as the thing that or covetousness, I can't remember how she phrases it, as the tool that Satan's going to use for the church to distract them. A lot of that centers around money, like literal money, because that was the thing that distracted the church from pursuing their mission and etc. etc. But if we were to come to today and make application of what that might look like, and we ask ourselves what worldliness is prophetically, I guess, at a simple level, I would think that would be related to, let's just say, inequality, or sexism or whatever, or something like that. And so the cutting yourself off from the world would be cutting yourself off from those things that are holding you to the world's worldview. And in the context of what we're discussing today would be that, I guess. I don't know.
No,
And Mrs., how do you do that?
found practically what does that look like?
I'm going on mute now.
um, let's just get this. Let's just get everyone talking. Then, should we be communists or socialists? In other words, should we live in commune type environment where all our money is pulled together and everyone shares and shares alike? Should we do that? Is there a place for, getting ahead? Is there a place for capitalism, if I can put it that way?
I would say socialism, yes. There's unlike Curtis, I don't like capitalism because capitalism makes a few people richer at the expense of the rest of the world, which are poorer. But socialism, I think I see sense in it. I'm not talking about communism where you're forced to just give up your wealth to the government so that it's used for everyone, but to have systems that can make sure that everyone's needs, basic needs, are provided for, and you can still work and upskill yourself, but you know that you have education, you have healthcare, you have, all of those things, housing and things like that. Yeah.
Sure. Even in a capitalist economy or capitalist government, there's still benefits. There's still housing benefits. There's still disability benefits. There's still benefits there. Even in America, there's still benefits, even under Trump's regime. The issue, the issue I guess I'm saying is some people are needy or poor for various reasons. Some of it is of their own making. Some of it is life just dealt them a bad hand. They've had an accident, disability. There's various things. In some countries, they don't have a benefit system, and if you get hit or disabled, that's tough. So, whereas if someone who's more industrious, if someone is making wise investment decisions or taking risks, if someone's taking risk and they get rewarded for that, should they then have to part with all of that wealth to help someone who didn't make good choices or good decisions? Emma?
I'm just thinking of like biblical principles, even what we just read about owning your own home, is that I'm not completely sure I understand the definition of socialism versus capitalism. But I think the idea of capitalism, or one of the ideas, is that, as you say, the person who works hard gets ahead and gets a private business, owns their own home, those kind of things, which are similar to the biblical principle: if you don't work, you don't eat, isn't it? Don't we see that principle in scripture? And even Ellen White saying, own your own home. This is a good thing for people to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. That whole, isn't that a capitalist thing? But and isn't the principle behind capitalism that you do the best you can, and then obviously if you can help other people then with that wealth, if there are people that genuinely need help, there's obviously you've got the people that, like you say, they don't work, or the lazy ones, or whatever you put that, I don't know. But it does seem to me to be good that you promote individual talent, I suppose. And what do we do with the fact that their talents are unequally distributed? Do you squash that?
No, I think there's a place for, I call the word philanthropy, where if you can make a difference, yeah, I think make a difference. Everyone is dealt rain and sunshine. It's how we respond. I saw, so it's a true story. It's a movie called The Banker. It's a true story of a black man in the States, and he becomes the first black man in America to ever own a bank. But when you look at how industrious he was, so when he was a young boy, he was shoe shine. Okay, so he shined people's shoes. But what he would do, he would listen into the conversations of the people, and then he'd write notes. He'd write notes how these people were investing, how these people were making money, and he would deliberately shoe shine outside the banks, because people coming in and out of the banks, he'd listen to conversations. He would also stand in below the windows, open windows in the banks, listening to the conversations, listening to investment advice, and he'd write notes. And his dad, when the dad saw what he was doing, he says, "Nah, son, you're dreaming." But he didn't give up. And what he did was he would just keep learning and learning and learning. And then he moved to California. And then what he would do is he would look at buildings, and he would see which buildings, in the evenings, which had lights on and lights off, so he could determine the occupancies. And he had this ability to evaluate, put value on the buildings based on occupancy. So I'm saying, for someone like that, who worked hard, he developed his skills. Why wouldn't he deserve to be wealthy in that sense because of hard graft? So I think we owe it to all ourselves to do the best that we are able to do, and then we leave to God the rest. If we're not able to have our own homes, if we're not able to develop those skills, all right. But foremost, I still think, what is happiness? Surely happiness is being content and living with what's being given into our hands and making the most of that. I didn't see it. Go ahead, Titus.
Democratic socialism.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. I'm not going to read everything in the chat, but yeah, democratic socialism. What is democratic socialism? You probably know.
I wanted, I agreed with what Kati said, and I wanted to add that on the question that what Laudesha looks like in our time in relation to the quote, and I thought, yes, it's patriarchy, it's sexism, but that practically is manifested through inequality in resources, because if we put men on one side and women on one side in the world, men own most of the resources and women don't own much resources. If we put racism, whites versus blacks, whites own more resources. And if we consider issues like immigration, it's Western nations affluent who want to protect their assets and their wealth from perceived threats from immigrants. So I think practically it's manifested through inequality in distribution of resources. And as Kati said, then it means if we have to get rid of this sexism patriarchy, it is reaping ourselves of the benefits of patriarchy. And then the question as to whether we should have capitalism, I thought, and this is what we back in my fellowship in Kenya, we were discussing and debating, and it is that the system determines 90 or 95% of an individual's success. I think we would make this joke, and I would say, if we have an hardworking person in Kenya, very hardworking person in Kenya from like a rural background, if that person works very hard, the chances is at the end of his life, he might not even have resources equal to a lazy person from the same background, say in United States or Denmark. So I would say the system determines 90% of 90% of where individuals go. And in regard to that, then whichever system you have, if that system is good, if that institution is good, then it's guaranteed that the individuals within that system will be successful. So, and then I really don't think we have inequality in terms of our human potential. Of course, I believe we can have different talents, but across the board we are all equal. I think the problem is nurture, because we have many people in the United States who are brilliant, like wealth investors, all that. And if you compare it with, let's say, Asia or Africa, then the difference comes. So my answer is, I think it's democratic socialism, because of course, and it has to have um, some capitalism in it. And democratic socialism, all of us, we are in it. Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Hi,
Um,
Manjit.
I
So I wanted to say that I I agree on one point that Titus mentioned, that if the system of the institution is all right, people are well up. So I'll give an example. So here in the UK, someone who is doing domestic, a cleaner can earn a living wage. They can rent, or they are paying a mortgage, they drive a good car, but if you look at a domestic cleaner in another is a country where they don't have living wages, the person will be lucky to own a phone, not an expensive phone, but just a simple phone to communicate. That person will be lucky if they can own their own phone, So the success of people also depends on the institutions that are governing them. If you can really, I know some people in Zimbabwe that work hard. I don't work as hard as them, like manual labor. They are so strong, you know, but they earn less, you know. And I know some people here that are just dusting things on the shelves, you know, and or just cleaning. They use a mop. They don't need to go on their knees. They have hoovers, they have machines to do the cleaning and all, and they're earning more. So that affects really how far someone can go. And also, it doesn't mean there was a point that you once mentioned that, okay, so if things are stagnant or there seem to be no hope, I think it was in connection with home owning and all. All I would say is sometimes we should also just look out for opportunities or open our we should be open to new ideas and all. So I'll give you an example. The people that came to the diaspora here in the UK, coming from Zimbabwe, we knew that we're coming to do healthcare work. We knew that it was something that people looked down upon. So the other people in Zimbabwe will say, oh, they're going to scratch the old people's backs in the UK, So you might have your degree or what, but then sometimes you look and say, this is a better opportunity, though the title might not be good, but this is a better opportunity for me to make money, than for me to remain in Zimbabwe with the title, administrator, but with no money to that title. So sometimes it also calls for maybe humbling yourself, looking for other opportunities. I know in the UK, there are some areas where you can get properties, like you're saying, for 45, 50,000, but they're not the flamboyant places. But sometimes it's it calls for a humble investment or realigning your mind and thinking what really makes sense, and not worry about what people say or what people think. Yeah.
So yeah, that's good because I mean, so having a dream focuses you, and I mean, just like you were talking about that banker, he was shining shoes right outside the bank, and I mean, not the banker, the boy. And from there, he progressed to something else and was listening to all this about investments and everything, even though his father kind of didn't encourage that. But he had this dream and he was focused and he went for this dream. So it's possible, anything is possible.
Can I just mention, what about technocracy that we're heading to in the USA? How we feel about that? That a few AI tech pros will control everything and are doing quite a lot already with military, all your data, what to spend.
It's a good time to invest in the net
Oh, the
in the
ones
technology
the
industry
ones that
because it's gonna boost. So put your money in AI and tech. It's gonna boom. I think things like that, Natalie, it's a personal thing.
it's not It's
no.
not personal with Trump, is it?
Well, no, but
It
what
is personal, I mean, but it's
well,
not.
what I mean is where you want. I think I've mentioned this before. Where you invest is really going to be personal to you, and like I said, as well, investments or investments which are deemed authorized within government circles. So, for example, if it's FCS registered, you have some protection.
I wasn't talking about investments.
No. But what I mean is it meets certain criteria. But so I don't understand the question then.
So whatever you were talking about before, how you got to the point. If you go back up, I think I can't remember what you're talking about because Rose and CG.
They're talking about this dream, but you're talking about what do I think about the AI
No,
technocrats?
before
Was the word said technocrats?
What was before that?
Oh, but the banker guy.
Yeah, before that.
I can't remember.
Oh,
Are you asking how that's going to affect everyone? That the whole technocracy thing? Is that
no.
going to
I can't remember. I don't know if it was blessings. We talk about something.
It's talking about institutions. What? So this reiterate your point again, Natalie.
No, it's okay.
You sure? Because it felt more like a statement than a question.
Blessing's got his hand up.
Go ahead, Blessing.
Yes, I wanted to go slightly back to the conversation we had about economic models and trying to relate that to the biblical economic model.
Okay.
Personally, I think it's difficult to identify what the right model is, just based on either a surface analysis of the models that exist today. In particular, capitalism is really the economic system that runs the world, and things that we read in the scriptures. Because I think Titus mentioned democratic socialism as a solution. I don't think it's that straightforward. Charity says a better alternative. I still don't think it's that straightforward. I feel like there needs to be more research into what these things really are, like what they actually are, before we can know for certain what works and what doesn't, before we either condemn one and praise the other, because it's not that straightforward. That's all I wanted to say concerning those economic models. Because yes, we recognize that institutions, the government has a role in taking care of people, and I think it has also been mentioned by others that it's a reality of life that if you work hard, you gain rewards, and
It depends.
you gain rewards if you work hard. And if that is the case, how you manage the reward of working hard and balancing that with the interests of overall society, it's not a simple thing. That's just my point, that I feel like we have to be careful to not make it simple, because it's not simple.
No, yeah, I agree.
Can I say something as well, Manjit?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say it's not an issue of us making it simple, like democratic socialism is what's going to solve all the problems. But it's also identifying how the capitalist system, how it has been the default system, and it has been difficult for governments or people to want to move away from it because it has been mostly benefiting a set of people, and those people are the ones that are running the businesses and control of, if I can say, the economy, right? Because they're the business people and all. That's what I think. So that system, for over years, we've seen how it has brought in a lot of inequalities because the money and the control of the markets and everything has just gone to a small group of people. And because of that, it has left most of the poor people having to work extra hard, not to get to where those people are, but just to survive. And that's not fair. And it also sustains a lot of the inequalities that we're supposed to do away with in society, whether it's gender related and things. And I personally think that capitalism is not really helping us as humanity. And if everyone had the opportunity, I mean, if everyone would be able to get their basic needs, it would at least help people. You would start from somewhere, and it would help people to work towards certain things. Of course, people can then work to become richer or have more resources or whatever. But at least if everyone is able to get, you know, basic needs, for me it's a starting point. And that's something that has been difficult, because the more the richer countries become rich, the more money that goes to, you know, the small group of elite. And when things need to be solved in the world, whether it's climate change or whatever, the people that are being taxed are the people who don't have anything, who are just trying to get by. So it's not a system that's really helpful to humanity.
Okay, so
And like I
really,
said, I'm not making it as simple as
no,
democratic socialism is the answer, but I'm saying that system, capitalism, it's not a good one.
you know, I'm not really here to address which political system we should have or governmental system we have. I'm just sharing, really, whatever circumstances we find ourselves, whichever country we're in, all right, whichever government we're in, there are things that we can do to try and better ourselves. So I'm not going to go into necessarily specifics of where you invest, what you're going to, but everyone should be having a pension, you know, so everyone should be investing in the pension. And that's a start. That's a start of an improvement process whereby we can go on a road to improve ourselves, at least for something, you know, if we're around in the future and become to retire, we got something to fall back on. But wherever we find ourselves, it's making the best of the situation and doing what we can do. So I can't make decisions which government we have, whether it's capitalism. But I can decide myself, am I going to be a capitalist, communist, or a socialist in my approach and way of thinking? So I think I am now out of time. So, who's got a comment?
Okay.
So,
You can close to pray if you are done.
hold on, so Titus is saying, yeah, the institution of system determines more than 90% of individual success. That's why good institutions matter. Okay. Okay, let's close in prayer, and then we'll continue this next time we are together. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for time together. And Lord, I ask that in each and every one of our circumstances, where we are, which part of the country or which part of the world, that you give us wisdom, that you will guide us, you will prosper us, and help us, Lord, to find the best way in life possible with your blessing. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.